So when I first started studying it, it's like I just started writing down, then I'd see something would happen. I'd try and look back what happened then. I'd try and remember what was happening at that time. I couldn't always remember what was happening at those times. So slowly I had to build up a history, a biography, my own history, a data history, so that I could go back into it and see when things happened to confirm what was going on, to get a perspective. So kind of like if you have a band, listen to a band, most bands, most musicians are playing their instrument and they're more or less correct. They're not perfectly pitched and they don't stay perfectly pitched as they're played. It warps a little bit, but there's a whole general feeling that's there. And that's how we live our life. It's not till we hit our thumb with a hammer that we really become critically aware of our thumb. Or get a toothache or have things that happen, we become critically aware of specific parts or pieces of the whole puzzle. But no matter what happens, no matter how we move day by day as we move through our life, as we progress through it, we're gaining experience and gaining awareness and increasing how much we can encompass, how much we can live. We're expanding, we're growing, just like a plant is growing from its seed up, getting above the horizon, growing up to make the flower. Okay, so we're always gaining experience. Every moment we're gaining experience. We're always adding these things in. So, I mean, our planets move, all the planets keep moving and everything moves on. And there's not going to be in your life a time when the planets come back to be, all of them at the same time, come back to be back where they were when you were born. It doesn't happen. So by the time you come out of the womb and you've come out of being one with mom, you're separated, you're on your own. You never go back to that oneness again. If you're a woman, you can have that oneness by having another child within you, another soul come through within you. But really, your chart's the moment of how you got separated, how you became on your own, how you had to breathe for yourself, and how you had to grow to build into life. And there's patterns that happen. So, okay. So I'm just, so everything moves. And so we're looking from the chart as it stays the same, but everything's moving around it. Now, okay, let's go a little bit further. So if we took a bigger planet, like I just here, just taking Saturn, which we'll be using, here's the Saturn, here's 7 Leo in this chart, in my chart, and it moves around. I just have a drawing moving around 90 degrees. It moves around 90 degrees along the chart. That's for 7 years of my life. So all the planets will start from someplace and it moves around. Okay, as it moves around, it will touch, it will conjunct different planets and trigger off interreactions with these other relationships. So we have the ephemeris, or we have the computer can give us this process where it goes along, and then we have to find the times in our life when these moments hit. And these would be considered crisis times or critical times. Crisis times are times when there's stress, there's tension, and there's opportunity for change or for growth. Nothing, you don't get born without stress. You don't have great experiences without stress or tension. So the momentous things in our life happen under stress or tension. Okay, so this goes along. Sometimes, usually when you're seeing a transit, when it goes along, they go along, but every year the Earth goes around the sun. There's and as it comes between the planets, they go retrograde. So you get this point where a planet will go forward, back up, and go forward. So as it's going along, on the previous drawing, we saw it just marked the conjunctions, didn't mark anything else. It just showed the A, B, C, D, E, F of main turning points. But each of these turning points, a planet will go over it and back up and go forward and back up and go forward and go back up. So there's usually 2 or 3 hits as the planet goes along, as in this case, as Saturn goes around. It's not going to touch just once at each of these points. It's going to move forward, back up, move forward. I mean, the planet doesn't move backward in its orbit, But from the Earth moving back and forth around it, it makes it look like it's moving backwards and forward. So I'm not going to get into retrogrades big here. I just wanted to just try to explain, get some sense of visualization to start from. Yeah. So also, so it starts off these cycles. I want to do this right now. Yeah, okay, we'll talk about this. We'll come back to it too. In any cycle, it starts when there's a conjunction. And it moves along, makes till it gets 90 degrees away from where it started. Then it opposes 180 degrees away from where it started, goes back to 90 degrees from where it started. It's coming back to, and it gets back to the conjunction. So that would be a cycle. When it's near the conjunction, it says at the beginning, it's the activity of a cycle. Two energies are coming together. When it's in opposition, there's an awareness because the energies are opposite each other. You can see the difference. But this basic, these are the main four turning points, the four directions, the four aspects, the four turning points. We studied them in our natal chart, but in transits, we got to make some adjustments. There's so much going on, we have to cut down. When we work with a natal chart, we're working with planetary aspects. We allow 7 degrees, 10 degrees if it's a sun or moon for a major aspect, 7 otherwise. So we're allowing fairly big orbits for the planets. Some people allow even bigger than that. But when we're working with transits, you close down the orbs, you tighten the orbs. And when we work with the transits, we're going to end up working with 1 degree orb for shorter periods of time. So we're going to look when it's critically at these points. Now, each planet starts out in conjunction with itself. It starts at its own place and it begins to move around. So every planet has a relationship to itself first. And as it moves around, a certain level of consciousness, a certain energy begins to develop and evolve. So we grow. So we have the moon makes its cycle. We have our moon and everything. So we're going to go through this in a second. But then Mercury, then Venus, and each planet has its own, moves at its own speed, but it has its own cycle. And each of these cycles are cycles that everyone that lives have almost at the same time. They're not the same, they don't start at the same time, but they're almost the same age. You know, a kid gets to be 2, starts at terrible 2s. And, you know, like someone hits 15 or someone hits 30. We have these turning points in our life that everybody more or less has them. And around the same time or same age. And then as we get into individual charts, we see how it's a little early, a little late, it's a little different, but it's around there. And we get the development of what a human life is about. So I just wanted you to see this idea of the cycle experiences. I just want to see. No, I'm just going to stop this reading. Okay. Then these cycles, as we're looking them go around, we see the cycles. You could draw it like a square. On the left-hand side, you see the cycle, the circle, the chart. Below it, you see the circle, but it's drawn like a square, just pointing out the squares and oppositions, the 90-degree aspects. Okay, so you can draw a pyramid is as good a representative as a circle as you can make it a square foundation. When we want to look at time, instead we can see it going around the circle, but they tend to overlap, and we're really going to be looking at cycles. It starts, it goes halfway around the circle, then it goes around the circle. So we split the top half and it becomes a wave motion. Instead of a cycle, it becomes a wave. And on the bottom part, you can see it's easier to draw. We just draw these squares, but it's basically the same as the wave. The conjunctions, the squares, the opposition, the squares. It just highlights the key points. And everything moves like this. We're gonna have to look at this information and find out which planet is doing what at what time. Okay, and we're going to see the timing these things happen at in our life, and we're going to start to see the textures of how these things affect our life. What else we got here? So when I was going to, they have a handout thing, but it wasn't on this, didn't work properly, so I couldn't put the downloads down for you. I'm going to have to send them to you tonight. From Hightail, and I'll send you the links to get graphics. So this next one is the one we'll be working with. This is for transits of Saturn to Saturn. And we'll have the aspects are there. We have different lines for the number of times it might hit. And we write in the dates, and then we see what happens in our life. So we're going to come to this. I don't want to So right now, I want to just talk a little bit. So there's a texture, there's a dynamic, there's a whole bunch of things going on. But to look at all these aspects at once is overwhelming. It's too much. So the first way to understand planets, we're going to work with each planet at a time, one planet at a time, and what it does across a lifetime. Once you see what the planet's doing and how we grow through a cycle of a planet, then we're going to look at the different cycles that planet sets off to the other planets in our chart. Then we're going to, and to the angles in our chart, and then we're going to go through each of the planets. But the first way to introduce it is to think when we're born, and to just imagine through life how these cycles happen. We're born, we come out of the womb, we take a breath, or we come out, we get slapped, and we take a breath, we get that first breath, and we're alive, we're here. In that moment, the first cycle that happens, I mean, life is a life and death thing. In that first day, in that first 24 hours, that first rotation of the earth, the first 24 hours after we're born, there's a relationship from the moment we're born to 6 hours later, to 12 hours later, to 18 hours later, to 1 day, to surviving a day. And each 6 hours after we're born is a relatively critical time, depending on how healthy the body was and how the connection works. Those are stress points. Nurses would see it in the hospital. You know, when they're having to watch the newborn for the first day, they have checkups, have to watch things at different times. So we start out in the first, on a daily basis, going through these adjustments between, we're experiencing the elemental conscious. We're not even half conscious, but we're aware of light and dark, wet and dry, cold and hot. Our body's super sensitive, just come out of being inside our mom and protected. We're coming out and we're being exposed to elements. And the elements aren't staying the same. They're not conditioned, staying the same temperature, same color, same day, same night, the same light out. It's changing. It's the nature of the world. And as it changes, we react. And each time, the first time, it's always challenge, a real to react. And then we begin to, as a second day or third day, we begin to make it more normal. We've experienced this before. We've gone through these things, and we begin to build up our experiences of it. But first thing is the rotation of the Earth, which is turning around once, and we're going to, in that 24 hours, we're going to go through. We got 4 key points. The starting point. Well, we started. Okay, the square, the opposition. When we're starting, we're right on top of the world. Or at sunset, or the sunrise. It's not really sunset, sunrise. It's just what's up from where you start. What's in 6 hours? What's in 12 hours? What's in 18 hours? But it's also, then it also begins to include sunrise, sunset, above or below, daylight, darkness. You know, all of these things have effects on. They're part of being alive. They're an integral part of being alive, and we're reacting to it. This goes by really fast, but this is our first cycle of watching things. So day by the first day we survived the day. Whoa, first big shower, a day old. It's better than a few hours old and not being sure if you're going to make it. Okay, like so many things. So then the next day comes around and the same cycles repeat. The light, the dark, hot, cold, wet, dry, breathing, taking in nourishment, being and putting it through our body starts to function. Super sensitive. Could say painful, but just super sensitive. Well, but there's nothing to compare it to. It's just happening. The soul's becoming awake to the phenomena of life and its sensations. But this is the elemental side, where you're running across elements and affecting your physical being, whatever. It's like you see your little baby say, "Oh, it's smiling." It's not. It's not seeing. Those functions aren't in quite then. You know, like it's gas, or it's like there's a mechanic that's going on that's growing, but that's the first sign. By the time we get 1 day, 2 days, 3 weeks, by the time we get to a week, we've gone through 7 days of these four stages.